Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joeybaking.com. Today we're going to make triple chocolate brownies, and this is what they look like. These brownies do have three kinds of chocolate: semi-sweet chocolate, unsweetened chocolate, and unsweetened cocoa powder. So they have a really intense, deep chocolate flavor and a moist, slightly chewy texture. And I do like to add some chopped nuts as well to get a nice crunch. So the first thing that you will have to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. Now, I do like to toast the nuts before I add them to the brownie batter. So that's the first thing you want to do. Like I said, I'm using hazelnuts. I just love that combination of hazelnuts, chocolate. But you could use like pecans, walnuts, almonds. Now, if you're using the hazelnuts, put them. You will need 1 cup, which is 120 grams. You want raw, skinned hazelnuts. Put them on your baking sheet, and you'll bake them for maybe about 13 minutes until, these ones I've already done, you can see they've turned a little brown. But the best way to know if the hazelnuts are really pecans or anything is fully baked is you will start to smell the nuts. Your kitchen will just smell like hazelnuts. And then you want to then cool them and then chop them like I've done here. If you're using like pecans, walnuts, or almonds, bake them for maybe about 8 minutes, so a little less. Same thing, they'll turn a little bit of color and you will smell them. So then, once you've done that, then you will need an 8-inch, which is 20 centimeter square baking pan. And I lined mine with foil, the bottom and up the sides. And I like a little overhang, so once we bake the brownies and cool them, we can just lift the brownies right out of the pan by the foil. You could also, if you don't want to use foil, just use parchment paper. And then I'm going to butter the foil. So what I've done is just melted like maybe a tablespoon, about 15 grams of butter. And then with a pastry brush, I'm just brushing the bottom and sides. Or, you could just use one of those non-stick vegetable sprays as well. Okay. So that's our pan. For brownies, I just do them by hand. They're not a hard batter to make, so you will need a large bowl, and you want your bowl to be heat proof. So I'm using stainless steel, or you could use glass. And you will need a saucepan of simmering water because we are going to melt our chocolate with our butter at the beginning. So you will need 4 ounces, which is 115 grams. Now, you could use a semi-sweet, or really, if you want a deeper chocolate flavor to your brownies, you could use bittersweet. You can go typically on the baking aisle of your grocery store, and now they have lots of different brands of semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate. And what I like now is they actually usually label it like your cocoa content. So a bittersweet is usually like 70%, usually says right on there. And a semi-sweet, now that one, there's a kind of a variation, maybe around 55%. Actually, I'm using I think this is 66% semi-sweet, so I'm getting up to that bittersweet because I like a really intensely chocolate flavor brownie. And the other thing you could do if you don't want it like on the baking out, you could also go and just use your favorite chocolate bar. Again, it labels semi-sweet or bittersweet, and then just chop it. So once you've done that, then we're just adding 1 ounce, which is 30 grams of unsweetened chocolate. You can find that on the baking aisle. And that means the chocolate doesn't have any sugar. So it's really quite bitter. It's a chocolate you don't eat out of hand. So just, coarsely chop that and put that. And then we need some butter, 1/2 cup, 113 grams of. Now you can use salted or unsalted. If you use salted, then I would just leave out the salt in the recipe. And I did cut it into chunks, mainly so it melts faster. Because you kind of want the butter and the chocolate to melt at the same time. And if you have a big lump of butter, it takes longer. So turn that up. I just want it barely simmering. And we're going to melt the chocolate with the butter. You might have to stir it a bit. And you don't want it to get too hot. Once it's melted, then take it off the heat. Okay, so as you can see, the chocolate and the butter is melted. So take it off the heat, turn that off. Get a good stir. And then, you know, just touch your chocolate. Well, it should be warm. It shouldn't be like hot. If it was really hot, then I would leave it a few minutes. That's why as soon as the chocolate and the butter has melted, you want to take it off the heat. But that way you get to have a little taste. And remember, like the brand of chocolate that you use, you know, if you make brownies and I make brownies and we both use different brands of chocolate, our brownies are going to taste different. So just a little side note there. So now what we're going to do is add 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar, and our third type of chocolate, 2 tablespoons, 15 grams of unsweetened cocoa powder. You can use, I'm using Dutch processed here. That's what I have in the house. You could use the natural unsweetened, either one. Either one is good. And I'm just going to whisk this in. With a wire whisk. I mean, you could use your spatula, but I find especially when I'm going to add my eggs, it's better to have a wire whisk. Okay, now the sugar won't be all melted, so your mixture is going to be kind of granulated. That's okay, we'll fix that in a minute. And then we're going to add 3 large eggs. That's 150 grams of eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature. Especially with this, it's still a little warm. You don't want really cold eggs. And just add 1 and whisk it in right away. And once we add all of these, our batter's going to smooth out. Nice and smooth and shiny. So give it a little time. Another one. Last one. And I'm also adding 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. I like vanilla, chocolate, hazelnuts. It's just for flavoring, so if you don't want the vanilla flavor, you can just leave it out. So now at this point, we are going to whisk this a little until it gets nice and shiny and smooth. And it will get a little hard to whisk, but that's good for us, isn't it? A little exercise for our arm. Okay. So I find when it gets really hard to whisk, that's about right. And as you can see, I don't know whether you can see that at home, maybe the light reflecting. It's nice and shiny and smooth, so we're good there. I'm going to switch over to my spatula now. And I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup, which is 95 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour. And that's going to give that little bit of chewiness to our brownie, the flour. And then I'm adding 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. Now, if you use a salted butter, you can just leave that out. And fold that in along with our 1 cup, 120 grams of hazelnuts. I think I did say, if you don't want nuts, some people don't like the crunch in their brownie. You can just leave it out. Or you could add, if you can make it like a quadruple, I guess, brownie, and add some chocolate, a cup of chocolate chips, 170 grams. You could add some dried fruit. I'll let you customize that to the way you want. Okay. I love brownies because, you know, 1 bowl, really quick, easy to make. Not a lot of technique. So even if you're, like, this is a great recipe, brownies, if you're new to baking. Because it's hard to for it not to work. Okay, so pour that in. Okay. As much of it as I can. Okay, and then you just take the back of a spoon, or I've got an offset spatula. The ends are all chocolatey, and just spread it out, get in the corners. Now, when you do brownies, you don't want to overbake them. I would err on the side of underbaking my brownies than overbaking, because I like them, you know, kind of moist. I don't want them dry. So I'm going to say 23 to 25 minutes. I tend to go 23. I know chocolate can be difficult to know when it's done. But the outside of the brownie, the top will be firm. But when you take a toothpick and put it inside, you will get some crumbs clinging to that toothpick, and that's what you want. You don't want it to come out clean, because that would mean you might be err on the side of overbaking. So I'm going to say 23. You might even want to try it in case your oven's running a little hot. Some people, a lot of times they do. You know, maybe check it at 21 minutes just to make sure. I do like to rotate my pan front to back about halfway to get even baking. So 23 to 25. Okay, so our triple chocolate brownies are done. So put your pan on a wire rack. I did do the toothpick. I don't know whether you can see that. There is some batter clinging to that. That's how I like it. And you can see the top. It's no longer shiny, and it's firm. That's the way I like it. And I'm just starting to pull away from the sides of the pan. So now what we want to do is let them cool down completely to room temperature. And then when we come back, we will take them out of the pan and try one. So our brownies have completely cooled. So take them out of the pan. Like I said, you've got these, just grab the edges of the foil and it should come right out. And peel that back. Now, actually, I find with brownies, it is better, if you can wait, but it's hard to cover and store them at least a day. I find that way that chocolate flavor really develops. Not to say they're not good now, but that's my personal preference, is to store them overnight. And you can store brownies at room temperature, or if you're like me and like cold brownies, I always store them in the refrigerator. Or you can freeze them too. So use a sharp knife. I do like to just clean the knife, and you can cut them the size you want. So I usually do this, like about that size. Some people like the corner pieces, some people like the center. Okay, I'm just going to take a little to try them. Oh, look at that. Nice and moist. See the nuts? Oh. I baked them about 23 minutes. So they're still nice and moist on the inside. That's how I like them. Really, I mean, we have that triple chocolate flavor. It's a complex chocolate flavor because we have the semi-sweet, we have the unsweetened, and the unsweetened cocoa powder. A really complex flavor. I love it. I really do. Like I said, I do prefer to store them overnight first because I think the flavor even develops even more than it is now. So, like I said, store them at room temperature, store them in the fridge, and then I freeze them. A lot of times I eat them cold from the freezer. Okay, maybe I shouldn't, but I do. So, you know, brownies are just, they're easy to make. Everybody loves them. And you must try this recipe. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.